Okay, so we're diving into Stoicism.
Yeah, it's one of those ancient philosophies that seems to be everywhere lately.
Right.
And for good reason. But
We're going to go deeper than just,
gritting your teeth and bearing it.
Yeah, it's often misunderstood, I think.
Yeah.
It gets reduced to just endurance.
Or just dealing with hardship.
Mm.
But actually, at its heart, it's really about...
A universal desire we all have,
Okay.
which is to live a good life.
The Stoics just offered a very specific framework for achieving that.
Yeah, and you've sent us some fascinating material.
From the basics all the way to some pretty deep philosophical texts.
So we're going to unpack it all for our listeners who want to really...
dig into this.
Yeah.
But I love how you frame that. Like...
because you're right. It's about...
it's almost like that.
Imagine...
you're totally stressed out. Your inbox is exploding. You've got deadlines.
And then you remember your Stoic principles, and
Right.
suddenly you're able to approach those same problems.
With a different...
yeah.
with a sense of calm.
It's about finding that peace.
Yeah.
That tranquility amidst the storm.
Yes.
And that comes from a really key Stoic idea, apatheia.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean becoming emotionless,
Right.
like a robot.
Right.
It's about freeing ourselves from...
Those reactive and often really unhelpful passions.
you tend to hijack us.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, like road rage.
Yes.
When someone cuts you off.
Yes.
Instead of letting that frustration control you.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to tap into a place of inner peace.
Regardless of what's happening externally.
That's the power of apatheia.
That makes a lot of sense because it's not about, like...
Suppressing all emotions. It's
Yeah.
about choosing how we respond
exactly.
to them. So how does this then all tie into this idea?
That virtue is sufficient for happiness, because that's always
Yeah.
sounded very intimidating to me.
It does sound a bit intense. But think of it this way. The Stoics believe that true happiness...
Or what they call eudaimonia.
okay.
Doesn't depend on things outside of us.
Like wealth or fame or even other people.
It comes from living a virtuous life.
Okay.
And by virtuous, they mean aligning our actions with reason and wisdom.
So it's not about waiting for the good things to happen.
Right.
It's about cultivating something.
Inside,
Yeah.
that's not dependent
That's right.
on those circumstances.
You got it. And that's such a powerful idea.
Yeah.
Especially in a world that's constantly telling us we need more, more, more to be happy.
Right.
The Stoics remind us that true happiness
Is an inside job.
is an aha moment. But
Let's talk about how we actually put this into practice, because it's one thing to...
intellectually get it.
Right.
But it's another thing to actually embody it in our lives.
So what are some of the things that...
Some of the tools we can use to start living more stoically
So one of the most powerful tools in the Stoic toolkit.
is something they called ascesis.
Okay.
And you can think of it as a kind of training regimen.
For your mind.
Yeah.
Like a gym for your Stoic muscles.
So instead of lifting weights, we're lifting our...
Consciousness.
exact...
Every time we catch ourselves reacting impulsively
Mhm.
or letting our emotions get the best of us,
Right.
it's like skipping a workout.
Okay.
But when we pause, breathe,
And choose a more reasoned response.
that's building our Stoic resilience.
So it's about recognizing those moments when we're about to get swept away.
Yes.
And
Choosing a different path.
precisely. And that takes practice.
Just like any other skill,
Sure.
the more we flex those ascosis muscles.
The better we become at navigating life's challenges.
Right.
With grace and composure.
So we've talked about this kind of inner work, but
The Stoics didn't just focus on our inner world. Right?
absolutely not.
They had a specific way of viewing the universe
They did?
and our place in it.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they believed that the universe is governed by a kind of cosmic reason.
Or logos.
Okay.
And just like there are laws of physics
That govern the material world. There are also moral laws.
that are woven into the fabric of existence,
So it's not just about this personal development. It's about
aligning ourselves with a greater
cosmic order. That's right.
cosmic order. Okay.
So how does that then,
Play out in our lives. Like, how does that...
cosmic perspective actually help us?
That's a great question. And for the Stoics, it all comes back to that idea of control.
Okay.
They were really big on focusing on what we can control
Our thoughts, our actions, our responses to the world around us.
and letting go of what we can't.
So that's where the dichotomy of control comes in, right?
Yes.
That
I've heard
sounds
that's a
Very
really
game changer.
helpful tool for dealing with stress and anxiety.
It is.
Because instead of stressing about things we can't change,
Like the weather
Right.
or the traffic or,
things that are just inherently outside of our control,
Yeah.
we can channel that energy into what we can influence.
Our own reactions and our choices. It's a simple shift in mindset.
Yeah. But it can have such a profound impact.
Yeah, so instead of getting caught up in the chaos,
Yes.
we're focusing on cultivating that inner.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's actually where the Stoic practice of negative visualization comes in.
Okay, now see, that one to me
Yeah.
always sounded a little counterintuitive.
Right.
Because I'm like, why would I want to focus on negative things?
Right.
Isn't that just going to make me feel worse?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive at first,
Right.
but think of it this way.
Okay.
By reflecting on the impermanence of the things that we value.
We actually deepen our appreciation for them in the present moment.
So it's like, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Exactly.
You know?
That's exactly it.
But we're,
Yeah.
we're thinking about it every day.
Yes, living with that awareness.
Not just when we experience a loss,
Precisely.
which I think is kind of beautiful, actually.
It is.
It's not about being pessimistic. It's about
really appreciating
Yes.
what we have.
cultivating gratitude,
Yes.
appreciating the good things in our lives
Wow.
while we can.
Well, we have them. Yeah.
And this practice can actually
Yeah.
help us deal with those inevitable
Right.
curveballs that life throws our way.
Right. Because if you're mentally prepared,
Yes.
you're less likely to be,
That's it.
completely
Yeah.
thrown off.
Exactly.
So it's not about expecting the worst to happen. It's about
developing a mental and emotional readiness
right.
for whatever life throws our way.
And it's interesting how this all ties back to that.
Dichotomy of control, too.
It does.
Because it's like, okay, we can't always control
right.
what happens, but we can control
Our response.
how we respond to it.
Yes. You got it.
Okay, so negative visualization, check.
There you go.
We're good with that now.
The Stoics also,
Placed a lot of emphasis on understanding our emotions.
they did, because they weren't about being emotionless robots,
Right.
right?
They had a
very different way of,
experiencing and managing them.
so it's not about,
Repressing your emotions. It's about understanding them.
about understanding them. Exactly.
So how do they go about that?
So one of the ways they did this was by really carefully distinguishing,
Between different types of emotions.
Yeah.
So, for example, they differentiated between passions.
which are those reactive, often unhelpful emotions
Right.
that tend to pull us off course.
Yeah, the road rage.
Exactly.
Road rage,
exactly.
yeah.
And then there are what they called good feelings.
Okay, tell me more about those.
Okay, so one example is kara, which is often translated as joy.
But it's not that fleeting kind of happiness you
Right.
might get from, like,
Right.
a shopping spree or a sugar rush.
Right.
It's a much deeper, more enduring sense of contentment
Okay.
that comes from living in alignment with our values.
So it's a joy that's rooted in something much deeper
Yes.
and more meaningful.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Another good feeling is eulabea, which is often translated as caution.
Okay.
But don't think of it as timidity or fearfulness.
Right. Yeah.
It's more about approaching life with a sense of wise discernment.
So thinking through all of the potential consequences
Yes, exactly.
of your actions.
Being strategic, discerning,
right. Not being impulsive.
rather than reckless or impulsive.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So those are just two examples, but
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, what about love
oh,
and relationships?
that's
Because,
like a great point.
we've been talking about
Yeah.
virtue and self-control.
Right.
But love can feel like this
It can.
very big and messy
Big, messy, uncontrollable.
and uncontrollable.
It's true. That's a great point. And
It's area where the Stoics,
had some really interesting insights.
okay,
You see, they believe that love, like everything else in life,
should be approached with reason and wisdom.
so no whirlwind romances for the
Well,
Stoics.
not necessarily.
No.
While they recognized the power of romantic love,
Yeah.
they also saw how it could cloud our judgment
Right.
and lead us astray.
Of course.
So they believe that true love
Yeah.
should be based on mutual respect,
Okay.
shared values.
A deep understanding of each other's character.
So it's about choosing partners
Yes.
who align with your values.
Align with your values, support your journey
Right, right.
of personal growth. Yes.
They don't become,
Too dependent.
well, and that's another thing they emphasized, was
Right.
that, love shouldn't be possessive or dependent.
Right.
They really emphasized the importance of maintaining our own sense of self
Yeah.
and independence.
So it's not two halves making a whole.
Yeah, that's right.
It's two whole individuals
Exactly.
that coming together.
Yes. And this applies not just to romantic relationships,
Right.
but to all our relationships with friends, with family, even colleagues.
Right.
The Stoics encouraged us to approach all our interactions.
With kindness, with respect, a willingness to see the good in others.
And I love that, especially in a world that can feel very
Divided.
It can.
It's nice to remember.
It is. We're all interconnected.
We're all interconnected, exactly.
That's right.
Which brings us to fate versus free will.
Yes.
Because
The age-old question.
if everything is interconnected,
Yeah.
are our lives
Right. Is it all preordained?
determined? Yeah.
Do we really have control over our own destinies?
Yeah, and the Stoics had an
I'd love to
interesting...
perspective on this.
They did. They had a very nuanced perspective on it.
Okay.
So they believe that while there are certain events in life that are beyond our control,
Right.
like the family we're born into,
Right.
the circumstances of our upbringing,
Right.
you know, even something as simple as like
Right.
whether our rideshare shows up on time or not.
Right. Exactly.
But within those constraints.
We still have a remarkable degree of agency.
Okay, so it's about focusing on what we can
Things.
control.
Yes.
Our thoughts, our actions, our reactions.
Our responses to the world around us.
It's like being an archer.
Ooh. I like
You can't control the target,
the target.
the wind,
Yeah.
but you can control how you
Control
usually...
your aim. You choose your arrows carefully.
Right.
And you shoot with precision and skill.
So even within the constraints of our own personal archery range,
I love that.
we can still
Yes.
aim for that bullseye.
You got it. And that's such an empowering message.
It is.
Because it reminds us that even though we can't control everything that happens to us,
we can still choose how we respond to it,
and it's in those choices.
that we truly shape our own destiny.
Oh, I like that. It's like we're writing our own stories.
That's a great way to put it.
Even if we don't always get to choose,
That's right.
every plot point.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and the Stoics would totally agree with that.
Right.
They believe that true freedom
Yeah.
comes not from controlling everything that happens to us.
But from mastering our inner landscape.
So it's about finding that place of peace,
It's heck.
no matter what's going on around us.
It is. And it's a lifelong journey.
One that requires constant practice and self-reflection.
Right. Right.
But the rewards are immeasurable.
They are immeasurable. So
As we kind of rack up our deep dive.
into Stoicism.
Yes.
For our listeners who are feeling very inspired.
Maybe they're ready to embark on their own
Yeah.
Stoic
Now,
journey.
what's one practical piece of advice
Okay.
that they can start implementing?
If I had to choose just one,
Yeah.
I would say start paying attention to your judgments.
Okay.
Notice how often you jump to conclusions.
You make assumptions.
Let your emotions just totally dictate your reactions.
So it's like,
Yes.
hit the pause button.
Yes, hit the pause button.
On those automatic
Yes.
thought patterns.
Right.
Right. And choose a more mindful response.
Exactly. The Stoics were masters of cognitive reframing.
Okay.
They understood that it's not events themselves that disturb us.
But our interpretation of them.
So the next time my computer crashes right before a big deadline,
Yes.
I should channel my inner Stoic
Channel your inner Stoic.
and try to reframe that.
Reframe that situation. That's it.
Instead of seeing it as a catastrophe,
Right.
I should see it as an opportunity to
Exactly.
practice patience.
It's an opportunity to practice patience, flexibility,
Right.
the art of just going with the flow.
Yeah, going with the flow. Okay.
So it's about turning those everyday
Yes.
challenges into opportunities.
It is.
Swinging growth.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
Because remember, the Stoics believed that within every difficulty...
Lies the seed of opportunity.
Oh, that's nasty.
It's up to us to cultivate that seed.
And allow it to blossom.
That's beautiful. So
As we wrap up our deep dive into Stoicism,
yes.
what's the one key takeaway
Okay.
you want our listeners to remember?
The Stoics would want you to remember that you are not a victim of circumstance.
You have the power to choose your thoughts.
Your actions, and ultimately your own path.
It's about really stepping into our power
It is.
to create the lives
Yeah.
that we want,
Beautifully said. And remember, this is a lifelong journey.
not a destination.
Right.
Be kind to yourself. Practice diligently.
And never stop exploring the wisdom of the Stoics.
Such wise words to live by.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this.
Incredible deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.